to executive session earlier and took no action. And we are back here on Monday, November 13th. Thank you for joining us this evening. As required by open meeting law, you are hereby informed that the town will be video and audio taping as well as live broadcasting this public meeting. In addition, anyone in the audience who plans to video or audio tape this meeting must notify the chairman prior to the start of the meeting. Seeing no one, will you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public comments and announcements. Anyone for public comment?
Yeah, hi, good evening. Patrick Otten at 49 Kendrick, East Harwich. Are you familiar with community rowing? Cape Cod Community Rowing. It's an organization, a nonprofit that is on Long Pond. We have a youth program that rowed this past season 6 weeks. They did 3 regattas, 16 youngsters, 12 to 18 participating. We also have an adult program with 45 rowers, adults rowing. And it was our end of our season this past week. We have 35 boats, 8s, 4s, doubles, singles. What do we do with them? Where do we put them? How can we store them? Because our season doesn't begin until next March. But fortunately, we reached out to Harwich Conservation Trust, and they offered us the use of their bog shed, their tin shed on Headwaters Way. And phenomenally, all our boats fit, the trailer can back in, and all of our equipment is safe and secure. So I just want to make the public announcement how wonderful it is that 2 nonprofits serving the public are working together to better the world. Okay, so thank you.
Good news. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Gerard Elias. My wife and I are year-round residents of West Harwich. And I just wanted to bring to the attention of the board and anyone here who would have an interest that I have a concern about the closure of the access to Hinckley Pond. For years, I have been an avid kayaker and angler, and I typically would drive my truck down this cartway that I'm calling it off of Headwaters Way to give me access to the pond, as many others did. Frequently, there would be a number of vehicles down there, and mostly kayakers. Occasionally, a rowboat would launch there. The launch, by the way, is at the town beach. That's also noted on the Harwich town site. So about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, I drove down Headwaters, and I was surprised to see that the access has been cut off. There have been 2 posts erected with a chain link across them, so you cannot drive down the lane, even though it is still passable by a vehicle. With a little bit of exploring and asking some questions, I found out that it was put up by the Harwich Conservation Trust once they acquired the adjacent bog. And I've had some conversations with, I think, the executive director, Michael's his name, about why that access was denied. Has to do with some possible vandalism. There was a suggestion that there were jet skis that were used on the pond. The vandalism is to the old pump house, apparently. There's some graffiti there. To be honest, that graffiti's been there for a number of years. With regard to the jet ski situation, I've since been unable to find anyone who can confirm that jet skis were used. So I just want to go fishing, and I'm curious as to why that access was denied, and it is still denied now. I don't know if the town was aware of that or if this was some action that HC took on their own. I don't know if there was a public hearing on it, if one was at all required. And just for the record, I am a great supporter of HCT, both by my words as well as financially supporting them for the past several years. I've made contributions to many of their efforts. I think they do a great job and great work, and I welcome anything that they want to do within the community that preserves green space. However, I do feel as though my rights have been taken away. And lastly, I would say that the action may be in violation of several laws on the books in Massachusetts. One, the colonial ordinances going back to 1641. Two, the general laws in Massachusetts, Section 45, and very possibly violation of federal American Disabilities Act. So I think those are all serious issues. I don't know why the action was taken, why it was necessary, and I'd like to see if we can't do something about it.
So, thank you for your comments.
Mhm.
First of all, it is Harwich Conservation Trust land. It's not Conservation Commission of Harwich's land.
I understand that.
And, Michael, do you want to just get up for clarification? I believe that there's been some reporting from residents, too, of noise and partying, et cetera, down there. So just to sort of get the other part of the story.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Michael Locke. I serve as the executive. May I have your permission to approach the bench? I'm just going to switch something here.
Approach the bench?
Oh, God.
You don't want to be stirred.
Thank you,
Permission
Counselor.
denied.
Thank you. I serve as executive director of the nonprofit Harwich Conservation Trust, and there's a lot of interest in the property that Mr. Elias referenced by many in the community. And so I'm going to just summarize some key background points because the issues of not reported but repeated vandalism, trash dumping, noise affecting neighbors, and potential liability and access deserve time and attention. So just by way of background for the organization, we're a small but dedicated nonprofit with a big task of trying to preserve priority lands that enhance the quality of life for the people of Harwich and the visitors to this special place. As Mr. Elias mentioned, thanks to donor support, Harwich Conservation Trust was able to preserve the approximately 1.5 acres of land that's located on the west side of the bike trail that's being discussed here. It's actually part of a larger 30-acre property, most of which is located on the east side of the bike trail. If not acquired, that land along Headwaters Drive would have become a subdivision, which would have forever destroyed the view from both Headwaters Drive and Route 124, as well as the bike trail. Septic system nutrients would have also flowed toward the pond. Public access could have been closed off forever if HCT hadn't stepped in to acquire the land. So in the fall of 2021, HCT opened a trailhead and parking area on Headwaters Drive on the west side of the bike trail, east side. And so folks have been enjoying walking the area. We've opened trails to 4 new conservation destinations over the past 4 years, including 3 during the pandemic when more than ever people wanted to get outside. Now, regardless, what we're experiencing is some people are stealing signs, some people are vandalizing property on the lands which all of us work so hard to protect, and we cannot stand idly by and let this happen, including at the site that's on the west side of the bike trail that leads down to the pond. Now that site is within the 0 to 100 foot town and state legal regulatory buffer for the pond, as well as for the wetlands on both sides of the bike trail. The hillside along the bike trail is eroding, and during heavy rainfall erodes significantly toward the pond. Meanwhile, Harwich Conservation Trust has not prevented walking access to the pond for hikers or fishermen or anyone else walking in the neighborhood. Vandals repeatedly ripped the door off the old pump house to gain access, despite our best efforts to secure the structure. HCT realized the potential liability of someone getting hurt on the property, so indeed we did put a chain across the dirt road this past summer because we noticed that a lot of the illegal activity was happening because of vehicle traffic down there. It's a remote area away from Headwaters Drive. We've reported incidents to the police department. They do their very best to respond, and still, it's a very difficult, complex situation. So we're working on an ecological restoration plan for the property that also takes into account how to prevent vandalism and also continue public access. It's complex, it's time-consuming. Harwich Conservation Trust has already spent 2 years working on this planning process, and we expect another 2 years at least to complete the funding, the permitting, and the construction. Meanwhile, we're doing our best to save other critical lands from being lost to overdevelopment in a very competitive real estate market, evidence of which is most visible with the land clearing taking place in East Harwich. We do our best to be good neighbors by protecting the land and water resources while balancing public access for a variety of interests. So this is a work in progress. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Michael. Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This portion of the meeting isn't really designed to adjudicate anything, so just with that in mind. And it may be that Michael and I don't always see eye to eye on everything, but Michael was very involved with the access to the pond when this was brewing as a purchase. I would feel more comfortable putting it on an agenda when he was available to have the fuller discussion about, is there an ancient way involved, an easement involved? I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that I know that Michael wanted to be able to have access, and I don't think it was just by foot to the pond. So it's a bigger discussion than what we can possibly have here, and we can't possibly vote on anything.
We're not voting on anything. It's not an agenda item. This is just a discussion that Mr. Elias brought up, and I asked Michael to give the other part of that.
And I'm asking to have this agenda so that
The only thing I want
Mr.
clarification
McCaskill
on is HCT already has the land, and
not to the pond.
and if you were to have sold those parcels, then they would be privately developed and you wouldn't have access.
That's why I want it on an agenda. You can't sell an ancient way.
Okay, so we can take this further to have a discussion, but just for clarification, this was Mr. Elias bringing up his concerns about access across land now owned by HCT.
If I could just say one thing, and I appreciate
Sure.
your time and everyone's time. The issue, and I empathize with the concerns and the complexities that HCT has, and as I mentioned, I fully support all of their efforts around town. They may be in violation of the laws that I just mentioned. So while they're doing their best to preserve the integrity of the property and to prevent further damage, they're breaking the law, potentially. I'm not a lawyer. We'll let the lawyers decide that, but the three laws that are on the books in Massachusetts and in the United States, I think are being violated. You can walk down there. I did walk down there yesterday, and I took pictures. There's no garbage. There's no trash. There's graffiti on the building. The door is ajar. It's been that way for years. And it is not, lastly, it is not really a remote area because you're within spitting distance of the trail. Anyone walking on the trail can slide down that hill. That is eroding. It's an open view.
Thank you.
It's clearly visible.
Thanks.
So
We'll look
I
into
would
it.
appreciate it being put on as a.
So Don, you can send me an email requesting that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Evening.
Hi, my name's Glenn Suter. I live on Edward Road, and I abut the cartway that has been discussed just recently. I am very appreciative of what the HCT has done for that area, and appreciative that quite frankly, the gate went up because of the garbage and the activity that happens at night in that area. I'm not too concerned about the boat people during the day. It's the nighttime issues. We've collected, my wife does this all the time, and that's why there may not be any garbage there right now. She goes down there maybe once every couple of weeks and bags up the stuff, and it's nips and alcohol bottles, and cans of beer, and it just goes on and on. We collected probably a bag a month from down there until recently, where there isn't anything. I walked down there today to check it out. And so You know, and the part, you know, there's clothes, other stuff that I don't even want to talk about that we see there. But that's the part, and this has been, you know, I've lived there for 15 years. And we've been doing this for 15 years because no one took care of that. And we like that area because we do abut that road. But it's the nighttime activity from like 9 o'clock to like 4 in the morning where we hear cars running down that road and coming back. Sometimes they're pretty quick, so you know other things are going on. But you know, I am in full support of keeping that closed up because it has been a heaven sent to have that change now.
Thank you.
I am concerned about the boaters, and if there's something we can do to remedy that, it'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Hi, Mark.
Mark Kelleher, West Harwich. I'll be quick. I've driven by Evergreen Cemetery about 1,000 times. I was there this past weekend for the Veterans Day ceremony. I never realized, first of all, there was a whole back section and how beautiful it is. And it was just a beautiful ceremony. Robin Kelly, Mr. Devine, the veterans agent, the police, fire, and public works. What an honorable experience. I even told a neighbor today, he was a veteran who's going to go up there and meditate. So I just want to compliment the town for everything they did for that day. A final thing, just a minor thing. When you leave tonight and you go out to this parking lot, which is very poorly lit, the closest light pole as you leave the building seems to give out quite a bit more light. And I'd just like to suggest whatever was done with that light pole to see if that could be extended throughout the whole parking lot, because I'm just afraid when we have black ice, some of my friends in here could slip and fall. And that's just a minor thing. It looks like the light pole closest in may have a different type of light, and that could help quite a bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Good evening, members of the board. Bobby Brackett, 183 Sisson Road, Harwich. I'm here on behalf of the Harwich Police Soccer Club. I just wanted, in light of the past few weeks, there's been a lot of attention to the youth rec activities in town. I just wanted to give an update on our program so that people are aware of some youth programs that are going on successfully in the community. We opened up our registration today for our winter futsal program that'll be run once again at the 204 on Saturday mornings for grades 3 to 12. It's a free program, and we get, generally we get about 200 kids a year that go through that every Saturday morning. We opened up registration the first 2 hours. We had over 60-something kids register today already. So I just want to let everybody know that that registration is open. You can access it through, there's a link on HPD Soccer's Instagram page, which is HPD Soccer. And if anybody has any questions on that or would like a link sent to them, they could send an email to soccer@harwichpolice.com, and I'll be sure to get that back to them. I do want to give an update over this past summer. I don't know how many went by the community center this past summer and saw our street soccer pitch that was set up there. That street soccer pitch is pretty eye-catching, pretty good attention grabber. We ran our program up there on one night a week over the summer. We got about 100 kids a night that were there on that, and I want to been very remiss in publicly thanking Carolyn Carey for her support in allowing us to confiscate a lot of parking spots at the community center over the summer. So I do want to thank her. She's been very supportive of our program in the past, and I hope moving forward as well. With that being said, that street soccer pitch is something that we have been lucky enough to borrow the past couple of years from Mass Youth Soccer Association. We first got it 3 years ago. We got it again this past summer. 2 summers ago, we were unable to get it because there were prior commitments for that. I have put in an application to CPC to try to obtain one for the town of Harwich for us to use and have here. It's a portable pitch. It could be set up anywhere in the community where it would fit and would have proper footing there. So it's something that is mobile. It's not something you'd set up different days of the week, but you could set it up there for a couple months at a time in different parts of the town. We would like to, at some point, find a permanent location that would be nice to put there, which brings me to one of the real reasons why I'm here. And I am looking for some guidance, support, guidance or direction from the board. There is a piece of property that the town of Harwich owns on Oak Street that's part of the White House Field land that is to the north side of the last driveway of the high school, that runs between that driveway to the Pine Oaks Village, and then from Oak Street back towards White House Field. I've talked to members of the Rec Commission in the past about this piece of property, and there's some confusion. It's Town of Harwich property, but there's some confusion whether that's under rec control or Monomoy School control. And that's a piece of land that we've kind of earmarked as a potential nice piece of property to expand and develop for some youth sports fields and activities, a little, youth rec center, little rec community area. So my question for guidance and support is if anybody has any insight on how we would go about determining, this might be best for Mr. Powers, how best to determine who actually has control over that land, so moving forward we can attempt to see if that is a viable piece of property for future development for some recreational activities.
Okay.
That abuts White House?
It does. It's on Oak Street. It's, depending on how you look at property, it's part of the White House Field property. So it extends past that last driveway of the high school, diagonally across from the community center, and goes over to Pine Oaks Village, and then back to the road that goes down to Potter's Field, in that little area, is what I'm saying. But there has been some confusion. I've talked to people of the Rec Commission. There's some confusion as to who actually has control over that.
Yeah, Joe?
So you may recall there was a proposal for a team building apparatus to be built from the Youth and Family Services Committee. So we already have that as a potential topic, but during that research, the property card indicates that the town of Harwich, through the select board, it does not indicate rec or the school system. So that, according to the property card, is town property.
Okay.
So, that's good news.
Thank you.
Happy to help.
Hi, Elizabeth Harder. Mark stole two of the things I wanted to talk about because I just really want to commend Robin Kelly for the work she did on Veterans Day and for the work she did setting up the veterans area of the cemetery. It was just wonderful, and we are so lucky to have her. The second thing, I agree with Mark. I got here tonight, and the parking lot was so dark, and I thought, okay, I'm getting old, but still, it's really dark. But now that I'm here, I have submitted a draft for the Housing Committee charge based on the Golf Committee charge and your template, including the relevant points from the charter. And from what I understand from a throwaway line Mary had a couple of weeks ago, you have approved someone for the Housing Committee, but haven't appointed them yet. So please do so as soon as possible. We have a lot coming up housing related, and Brianna could really use some help. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment and announcement?
Hello again, Patrick Otten. Just want to give you the update. This morning I did turn in 255 signatures for a public petition to call for a special election to fill the vacancy on the select board. Just FYI.
Thank you.
Okay.
On to,
Madam Chair, if I could. Brief announcement about the community center. On this Friday, November 17th, the weight room, cardio room, which is where the cardio equipment is now located in the center of the building, and activity room C are going to be closed all day Friday, and they will reopen on Saturday, November 18th. So two of the rooms will be closed during the day on Friday, reopening on the 18th. All other rooms will be accessible.
great, thank you, Joe. Furthermore, next select board meeting will be held on Monday, November 20th, 2023, and the next office hours with Jeff Handler will be Thursday, November 30th, from 5 to 7 at 204 Sisson. Jeff, can I get a motion on the consent agenda?
Absolutely, Madam Chair. I move that we approve Select Board meeting minutes for November 6, 2023, and I move that we approve the appointment of Paul Doan to the Historic District and Historical Commission, term to expire 6/30/2025,
As a full member.
as a full member.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 3-0, Joe.
Thank you.
And actually, just to skip down for 1 second to old business, Bob, I just want to let you know, obviously, I don't want to make you sit here all night, that we will go ahead and pull that. We don't need to take any action on that because the submission to CPC has been withdrawn for Phase 4 of Pine Oak. So just jumping on to that in case anyone was here about that, other than you, Bob. And on to new business. Review and approve conservation restriction for Elephant Walk, 90 Squantos Path, Lot G1-1 on Assessors Map 100, sorry, excuse me.
Hi, Michael Locke, Executive Director, Harwich Conservation Trust. Thanks for reviewing the conservation restriction proposed by Jacob F. Brown II and Earl E. Watson as trustees of nominee trust. Their intention is to donate this conservation restriction to both the Harwich Conservation Trust and our sister land trust in Brewster, the Brewster Conservation Trust, because the land owned by Mr. Brown and Mr. Watson spans both towns, approximately 2.6 acres in Harwich and 4.9 acres in Brewster. So by way of background, a conservation restriction is a legal agreement such that a landowner can exercise a right to extinguish all or some of the development potential on all or some of their land. They can benefit from tax deductions by donating that value in the land through the conservation restriction. The conservation restriction, in this case, again, would be jointly held by Harwich Conservation Trust and Brewster Conservation Trust. In this case, there's an existing home on the property and the Harwich portion of the total acreage, and the rest of the acreage is vacant with cart paths, pre-existing uses along those cart paths crossing the property. As part of the conservation restriction approval process, you as a select board are a signatory to the document. We've appeared before you many times in the past on these creative ways of preserving land that also has public benefit. Public benefits here include preserving land within the watershed to Hinckley's Pond. We know it's a herring spawning pond, the main source water for the town's Harwich Herring River. It also provides habitat connectivity with adjacent protected land by both Harwich Conservation Trust and across the town border into Brewster with land protected by Brewster Conservation Trust and also the town of Brewster's with its approximately 900-acre Punkhorn Park lands. So there's tremendous public benefit by virtue of this donation of a conservation restriction to the two land trusts. I respectfully ask for your consideration to approve. This will enable us then to move on to the state's Executive Office for Energy Environment and seek the Secretary's signature, and then we'll be able to record the instrument in the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions from board members? Jeff, do you have anything?
I don't have anything, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Motion?
Can we just mention that it's going in front of the Conservation Commission?
Yeah. That's what I asked. Did you have any questions?
No, it's not a question. I just want the public to know that.
Go ahead, cite it.
Just for public certification, it showed up in the Conservation Commission, which is one of our bodies.
Town agency, yes.
For review. So I want everybody to know that that's already happened.
Yes.
I move that we approve a conservation restriction for Elephant Walk, 90 Squantos Path, Lot G1-1 on Assessor's Map 100 as presented by Michael Locke.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Great,
3-0.
thanks very much.
Thank you, Michael. Discussion on use of town-owned property, votes may be taken. This relates back to our discussion last week when Leo Kukunis was in to talk about use of and by others that are for-profit versus nonprofit. So this is where this discussion came up with Leo. I said we would put it on an agenda item. And Joe, I'll hand it to you in terms of further discussion.
So as it relates to the comment made at your last meeting, and following on use of town property, typically park land or similar places are applied for through the Rec and Youth Department. And they have a form where they identify several locations, one of which is Brooks Park and Gazebo. So that would have been relevant to the craft fair, I think, that was held back in September. And that form is available on the Rec and Youth website. And then secondly, there is a document called Rules for Use of Ball Fields and Parks. And it's double-sided. On the one page, there are 19 rules that are identified. On the second page, it talks about how fairs, festivals, community events having food should then intersect with the Board of Health. On the rules for use of ball fields and parks, item number 2, if I may read it, Madam Chair. So there's outdated language because it says Board of Selectmen's townwide facilities use policy, use of all town of Harwich property, and facilities are restricted to town entities and not-for-profit/charitable organizations. A letter, IRS 501c3 certificate of tax-exempt status or articles of organization shall be provided by the organization to verify not-for-profit/charitable status. Insurance certificates will also be requested unless otherwise covered under the jurisdiction's use policy. And then it concludes with an italicized statement. Exception to this rule may apply when the use of property is requested and that property falls under the jurisdiction of the Harwich Recreation and Youth Commission. A use of facility fee may also apply. So in preparing for this meeting and prior meetings, I did sit down with relevant staff, talked about the form, and I was informed that staff applies that exemption, or that exception, excuse me, to the entire rule. So that in previous applications, that department and that commission have applied that they would be the folks to determine whether private, nonprofit, or profit could use it. However, while I think we can talk about the appropriateness of that exception, further investigation reveals that, again, relying upon property cards and assessor's records, Brooks Park and Gazebo is identified as select board land and not under the jurisdiction of the Rec and Youth Commission. So therefore, it would render parts of this form and process moot, in my opinion, but certainly something that the board could take up more readily.
Thank you, Joe. Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And that's exactly, Michael and I actually agreed on this, because this goes back incredibly, everything old is new again. It goes back to 1998 when this discussion was being held. And the two individuals who are no longer with us who actually did the vendor tents for the Cranberry Festival, but the agreement was that it had to be sponsored by 501c3. I, for one, and Michael, I know, feels this way, don't understand how it just fell into a different category by itself, because the select board had always asserted jurisdiction to that, and it always applied the same rule, that a 501c3 was necessary to sponsor the organization before you could even consider the application. So that was what the discussion was supposed to be about, is how did this morph into something where Rec and Youth thought that they owned that property. So it's more than just property cards. It has to do with process, and it always had been that way up until about 15 years ago, as far as I can tell. And it changed, but the people who were asking for the permission, luckily, were still 501c3s. I know the festival continued using the property as the primary requester, and then it subcontracted to other entities, but the money was flowing to them so that they would be benefiting the community with scholarships. So I understand that it's what the policy said. That was the question. How did that happen?
Well, I think ultimately we talked about the fact that when Leo was here to talk about it and brought it to our attention, he also mentioned a craft fair that was going on that actually wasn't going on there. That was at the Tech, so that had nothing to do with us. But back to the other craft fairs that have gone on that aren't affiliated with the Cranberry Festival, that's what brought this up. So to your point, if 15 years ago that was a known process and those people are no longer around, then I think that kind of answers the question as to how we got here. Somehow it morphed into a different process, and now the question is, what are we going to do about it? So do we go back, and I'm asking the question, feeling that we discussed this last week to a certain degree, do we go back and make that statement now, is that is the way it should be, that it's only for nonprofit uses? And the question that is raised by the information Joe brings to us is that currently, if rec feels that it is a for-profit but serves another purpose, it's allowable. So bringing this up here tonight is how do we want to move forward?
If I might, that was my point. It's not their property. It never was their property.
Exactly.
In our policy, unless we vote to change it, is that it exists already as a policy that it has to be either a town entity or a 501c3, and it has to come through us for approval, not Rec and Youth.
Understood, but to clarify, the question is, do we go ahead and make that restatement again, that is to only be for nonprofit, right? To drive that home, to make that clear that that's the policy. The next discussion that will come out of this discussion will be a further discussion with Rec and Youth about who is responsible for these lands. And that is going to be, I envision that as a joint meeting with Rec and Youth. Probably in the next few weeks, probably early December is what I am thinking. We'll bring them in, we'll have the conversation to weed out the varying policies that have seemed to develop over time. So for tonight, we can either leave this or we can vote to make a policy going forward that it is for nonprofits only, and that we control.
I'd like to move that we reaffirm our original policy.
Okay. I just have a few questions to get myself up to speed here. Joe, I hear rec and Parks and Rec, and what about Cultural Center? That's considered a town-owned property, care, custody, and control of the Select Board. Is that accurate? I'm just making sure I understand this.
Correct. Yep.
Because I don't want to kneecap anybody here. So the licensees, or the license holders, because they're not lessees at the 204, am I correct? We call them licensees who rent space there?
Correct. We went
Okay.
through a competitive process of advertisement. They were successful based on the requirements.
Right.
The board enacted several license agreements,
Okay.
hence the phrase licensee.
Thank you. So I just want to make sure that if this is going to be a town policy and the 204 is in fact a town-owned building, do any of those people in there sell product for profit?
But they went through the open bid
Okay,
process.
so as
that's
long as
why.
the open bid process takes care of that, that's fantastic. And what about if we wanted to bring other, I personally have had somebody come to me and ask me about renting property in the town of Harwich for profit. Is that, if we make this policy, does that,
So, and I'll jump in and then you can clarify if I'm going off the rails, but basically,
which we do well?
yes. So basically, similarly to the 30B process, if somebody were to want to rent that for profit, we would have to put out something to bid.
Understood.
And that there would be
So it's a 30B,
competition,
and then there'd be a competitive, okay,
right,
okay.
correct?
Correct. I want to add, as you have this discussion about what we perceive to be a motion, the 10 or so facilities that are identified on the Town of Harwich Recreation Department Rec and Youth Commission use of facility form, there's only one entry that directly correlates with current property records. It's the first one that indicates beach or park, and then there's a line where you could theoretically identify either the beach or the park. In preparation for this and prior discussions, there are 3 property cards that have some form of recreation and youth, recreation department, recreation commission that identify that entity as Town of Harwich-Recreation. The only one that relates to a beach is the Earl Road Beach parking lot. The other 2 locations are not on this form and are not related to the use that they're presuming here.
Okay.
One of them is the Witchmere Overlook, and the other one is merely the press box at White House Field, not White House Field. So there's still the broader issue of, yes, the town has all of these assets, whether they be a building like 204, which remains under the care, custody, and control of the Select Board, or any of these identified in the form for your discussion tonight, except where there is a reference to Rec and Youth. It still begs the question. Rec and Youth is an appointed committee that reports to you folks, so the question could be, therefore, do they truly have sovereign control over those other 3 properties?
Another one, please, Joe, if I may. If somebody wanted to rent the gym at the 204, that would be under the rec department. Would that be a fair statement? Who would they apply to for rental of the gym at 204?
I'm going to defer to the member that was looking to answer.
I guess that would be you, Mr. Howell.
Yeah, it's a municipal building, and it was never designated as youth and rec property.
Okay.
If we wanted to vote to delegate that authority to them to operate the gym, I suppose that would be okay, but as it stands right now, it was a gym in a building that we inherited as a middle school that became the 204.
And I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
And I'll direct my next question, I guess, to Selectman Howell. The front of the 204 building, if somebody wanted to rent the grass field in front of the 204.
I have for Hesh, and we paid a fee, and it went straight to this board for approval.
Great. Okay, and what about the auditorium in the 204?
That's
Same
a
thing.
rental property.
Okay. I'm just
Carol
trying to
takes
get an
care of it.
understanding about all of our spaces that we have and who's going to be the one to determine whether or not they're allowed to rent.
It's lonely at the top.
I think that also, though, that, the logistics of people interested in these things come into different departments.
Of course.
And so luckily, we have people that are willing to talk to each other and work together. So Kara is running the cultural programs over the, at 204, and in a sense has taken responsibility for the building, though, of course, the auditorium, the gym, she could be using them for cultural reasons, but also Eric could come. We have futsal in the gym. I mean, so you can understand why people overlap in that respect. But I think that when we look back, it's got to come through the board for approval. But I think your point is a good one in the sense that if it's a recreation activity proposed in the gym or in any field, you can understand why rec would get involved in that.
100%.
And then
Straight
you
away.
can also understand why Kara, who is running that facility, would be involved in that, but ultimately would come through. So it is a bit confusing, I think. Joe?
Thank you for that last statement. Perhaps I'm going to make it even more confusing, but recognizing I yielded to the 3 of you, I still have an answer to the questions. When it comes to 204 Sisson Road, I rely upon at least 3 direct reports. The Director of Cultural Affairs, Kara Mooney, for anything related to cultural programming. Brianna Powell for anything related to housing advocacy, and Eric Beebe, anything related to recreation. So I have directed the rec director to imagine programming in the gymnasium at 204 Sisson Road. So that's government programming of a recreation nature, and also for the fields outside and adjacent. That's separate and distinct from the Rec and Youth Commission that report to you folks. So I still rely upon staff members to use portions of that building.
Thank you.
Which again goes back to what we talked about with that building overall, the years that we've discussed it at great length and sometimes painful length, is the fact that all different aspects of the community benefit by that building. And the idea that others might have wanted us to, you know, demolish it makes zero sense to me for all the purposes that it serves. And the fact that you would never be able to build that building again today, so.
And I do agree with Don that we should look back at that policy and resurrect it.
Just as a practical matter, like, I wasn't just being flippant about it. Hesh used the front lawn of that, it's a 501c3, for a 30th birthday party for the Children's Center. And it was a rental form. We submitted it, we paid for it, and it went through here to get approved. So practically speaking, this is still going on. What happened was Brooks Park seemed to fall off the wagon. Those requests were not coming through here.
Ed, did you?
I wouldn't call you flippant, maybe a little.
Hello, I'm Ed McManus. I have the perspective of having been a selectman for much of the time that you're talking about, and also heavily involved in the Harwich Cranberry Festival. And when I first was both involved in the festival and a selectman, the application for use of the park, the area around the gazebo, was always handled by the administrator's office up until, and initially that was handled by the administrative officer with the production company, L&R Productions, that was being sponsored by the Cranberry Festival, and we received a fee from them for the sponsorship. When we parted ways, we learned that was not much of a fee, but and it's been a much greater benefit for the festival to operate those fairs themselves. But we continued to do that for a couple of years until such time as we decided to bring back the there was a year when we didn't run the September festival, and the next year we retrenched back to Brooks Park for the festival and connected with the community radio station WOMR, which in that first year of resurrecting the festival, they were down in the Hollow, which brought in the involvement of the Park and Rec Department. And I'm not as sure whether that was the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do, but it just sort of happened. And then as we did a couple of the festivals down there, we started actually for the summer craft fairs, putting in the application to the Youth and Rec Department for permission to use the park. I'm not exactly sure how that decision was made. It just sort of, as far as I can remember, happened. And at that time, I stopped actually putting forth the application because John Mahan, the chair of the Youth and Rec Commission, felt it was a little bit of a conflict of interest that I'd be applying in front of them. So it was other members who would do that. But and then, especially when we moved the music event up onto the field, which clearly the ball field is clearly something that the Youth and Rec Department operated, it became clear. And then subsequently we've moved up to behind the community center. But you know, it's sort of you know, when did it specifically happen? I can't really say a specific date, but it all of a sudden just sort of flipped, and probably not the. But in any event, the initially up until I think just the last couple of years, the groups who had been renting through the Youth and Rec Department the Brooks Park field have always been nonprofit It's only been in recent years that we've had for-profit craft fair production companies operating there without any sponsorship of a local nonprofit or governmental group.
Thank you. So, back to the
I
discussion.
had a motion without a second. Just
Yeah.
Second the motion.
using a pro-
Okay, moved and seconded. Okay, any
Madam
fur-
Chair, just for the record keeping, could you restate the motion?
Yeah, just to revert to continue using the initially voted policy of such permits coming through the administrative office and to the select board.
for-
Second that motion.
Did you want to add for nonprofits only?
Well, that's part of, that's the policy.
Because you're restating it.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's in place.
Yeah, okay.
Correct.
So seconded.
So seconded.
Yeah.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
3-0. 5-year overview of Town of Harwich Information Technology IT Services. This came up last week.
So, Madam Chair, if I could, I'm going to stall for some time as our Director of Information Technology comes forward to present, as you have in the packet. Really, Sarah Eden is best telling you where we are and where we're going. She can probably speak to some degree of where we've been because she saw the early or the late stages of it when she first started. And as I understood it from last week, you have this information, and eventually, as you get into contracts for Barnstable County IT, this is where this, I think, all came from.
Yeah.
But it's my pleasure to introduce our Director of Information Technology for her comprehensive report.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks
Hello.
for joining us tonight.
Yeah, so in your packet, you have the memo that I gave to Joe, basically stating where we were. So looking from when I came aboard last year, and I knew the town technology service was very outdated and hadn't been upgraded in about a decade on a lot of like the servers and software and stuff. This was leaving the town at a disadvantage and resulting in ineffective workload. And the town was at risk of data breaches and putting the town in a vulnerable place with cybersecurity. With the security holes needing upgrade, I know that the town had contracted with HubTech and Barnstable County IT to help secure those gaps in between my predecessor and I starting. HubTech was tasked with the network security, monitoring the networks, and doing the server backups. And Barnstable County IT was tasked with providing help desk support, supplemental on-site support, and facilitating the Microsoft 365 and Munis migration and upgrades. And then when I started last year, I got right to work putting together the capital outlay plan for the technology reinvestment. Where we are currently, I'm working with, we're in a couple months into the technology reinvestment initiative, and I'm working with different departments to help them get the computers and upgrades that they need that have been lacking in their departments. Also working with HubTech on doing the network assessment. We went around to all the different buildings and looked at, so that way what we'll need for like upgrading Wi-Fi, connectivity, just to really make a more robust network system for the now heavy use of internet connectivity that today's technology requires. And so this overview will give me like what I'll need, which will kind of be my plan for the capital outlay plan over the next 5 years of, going to which buildings are more critical than others that needing upgrade. And also the website upgrade project, and that's currently in the beginning stages. I had my first 2 meetings with Civic Plus, going over the timeline of and the deliverables, and then the next steps for going for that. Also, HubTech right now, they're still doing the monitoring of the town's network securities, providing a backup of the servers that we still have for the on-site servers. And they're providing most of the networking services for the police and fire building. Barnstable County, they provide the help desk service. So if people have IT issues, they can put in a ticket, and if it's something that they're able to do remotely throughout the week, they'll do that. And then they're also on-site 2 days a week to help with on-site stuff. And they are also monitor the Munis servers, which are up in the cloud. And then they're in the last stages of finishing up the implementation of the Microsoft 365 Teams migration. Most of the departments are now up on Teams and SharePoint with their data. And I know we got like the police and fire and I think library that are just a few outlying ones that ran into some technical issues that we had to work on to get them completely converted.
Was that with Teams that they had trouble, or?
Yeah, so I know for the library, we couldn't find like the information to get into the sonic wall or the switcher to be able to pass through the data versus, because it was just the phone lines going through the old system. So there was like some trying to, so that pushed that out like a couple of weeks. And then I know, I believe police, they'll be switching over. I think Ryan has like a few more things to help them with that he'll be in tomorrow working on that. So we're pretty much close to having everybody up on Teams and SharePoint. And then where we're going, so over the next several months, we'll be working with Civic Plus and then also working with departments to make sure that we have a smoother transition to the new website. And this work will include meeting deadlines for deliverables, working with departments to help them like clean up their pages, any old data that is like outdated, making sure that's kind of purged, so then that way when we go to the new platform, it's a nice clean bit of information, and then also working with departments on training for the new platform for the website. And also facilitating the capital outlay plan and upgrading the technologies through the infrastructure, through the town buildings, and the upgrades needed for the infrastructure. And that'll be based off of the network assessment that we get from HubTech. And then, of course, I will be staying informed on and up to date on industry standards and changing technology, because technology is constantly changing. And using best practices, making educated decisions and recommendations to Joe and to the board about, you know, if there's like new types of services we need, or when equipment may need to be upgraded, or also when services may no longer be needed, and make those recommendations.
That's great. Thank you so much. Questions from board members? Dawn?
Well, she and I have spent quality time together, Madam Chair. You have addressed largely one of my major concerns, because before you showed up, I know I had a malicious link embedded in one of my emails. And I know that Michael thinks you're just doing this to torture him, but there's some validity to not opening up links, or as I say, nice try. Things. The only concern I have now is a secondary one, because the integrity of the system really worried me, because we have our tax records, we have birth records, death records. I mean, if that were to get somehow taken away through ransomware, we'd be in big trouble. But the secondary problem that I saw in our, because I've had talks up in the MMA with the web designers, it may be a little late, the horse may be out of the barn, but it concerned me that some of our stuff had information fields that were just freestanding fields, and other stuff were data fields that you could point if you wanted to. And it created this kind of horrible dystopian environment where we could have a liaison listed in the selectmen's page for committees that weren't the same as other committees. The way to handle that is by making them, self-deploy. You fill out one field and they just fill out every other analogous field like that. Are we going to kind of work towards that? Because it also means something to me as a productivity thought.
Yeah.
People shouldn't be doing the same thing 5 times, depending on where they are on the web.
Yeah, so with the new platform, it'll be able to be much more, they call it a headless mast. it'll, still look like a normal website with links and navigation. But what it does is in the back is like the content is kind of held, versus like, so in Orleans, when we did a different platform, so we're going above than what I'd done in Orleans, and that was still kind of, it had like file folders, so like each department had their file folders and then their content, and you could kind of link back to it. So with this platform that we're going with Civic Plus, it allows the data to live there, and then it goes and you can have like the code or metadata and stuff go to where it needs to go in multiple places.
You're doing a hell of a good job.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you. Jeff, do you have any questions?
Well, the only thing I'm going to say is I think it's so important that our town stay current with our upgrades and our system software and everything, and thank God that you're here. Because a decade without that occurring, I mean, I consider us to be extremely lucky that we're at least in the place we are right now. Do you also do IT? I heard you say that we can create a ticket and it gets sent, but can you also do some of that stuff in-house for us if we need it?
Yeah, so I also have access to the ticket portal. So whether it's staff from Barnstable County IT looking at it, or
Okay.
myself, like, I'll sit when I get a second. Like I'll go through and I'll just see, okay, what tickets are critical, and then I'll try and like start knocking those out.
I see, so you have access?
Yes.
That's great. And I'm asking because my computer just froze as you see the switch, so
Battery
I'll be
died.
popping in tomorrow, or I'll create a ticket. You just tell me which way to go, and I'm gonna do what you say.
Either or is fine.
Well, you've been great to deal with. You're always friendly, happy, and smile, and I don't look forward to having to see you, but when I see you, when I walk through the building, it's always a pleasant experience for me, and I thank you for being here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't really know how to follow that.
It's really not, just say thank you for being here.
But it is it's a great memo you put together for us, and the only thing I've seen what you did in Orleans because I'm on all the town websites all the time, so you did a great job there, and I know you'll do a great job here. And one bit of feedback I'm just sharing openly that I was talking about how we're working on, all of this, that you're working on it. And I know we talked about creating email addresses for different, people on the committees. So I will share that I think it's a good idea, though I'm a little bit afraid as we roll that out, because I think there's a struggle there about people moving over to using a town email. So I say that because we might also want to think more broadly in creating just a email for the chair of that committee, maybe. So I'm just want to say it while I'm thinking it because I had that conversation. And I think it's great that you're also assessing any equipment because, I know there was a big investment with Microsoft Office 365, which I'm still struggling with the app, but I'm working on it. And do we have the ability to consider, and I know it's a cost, and so maybe it's not this year, or what's your opinion on Open Cape? Is that something we should?
I have looked to Open Cape, and the numbers that they gave me were ridiculously high. And I know, because I still talk to and keep in contact with my former boss in Orleans, and like I knew what they were paying for Open Cape, and it's for 3 buildings, it's much lower than what they were giving me as a quote for town hall.
Okay.
And so like they were bringing it down in price, and then, but as they brought the price down, they dropped the speed and connectivity down, which
So there's
was
no
way
point.
less than what we're having right now with Comcast. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not opposed to it, and I'm all for it, but
Yeah,
they're not
cost-wise,
kind of,
it's
yeah, they're
not.
kind of not transparent with their prices.
Okay, I was just curious on that. Otherwise, thank you so much, and thank you for all the hard work you're doing. I haven't had to see you much, and I hope that doesn't change, no offense, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you take my computer now?
Pen,
Gotta
I'll
put a
work on it
ticket in
tomorrow.
Thank
He
you,
wants
sir.
at least $300.
Bill Joe.
Madam Chair, if I could, before you depart from this topic, I'm going to yield on comments until it gets to Barnstable County under the contracts. However, I would be remiss if I didn't take this chance, as you folks were, to thank Sarah for her hard work. From the moment she came into town hall and in the role, she immediately brought us into the late 20th century. That's the ongoing joke. We're fully ensconced in the early 21st century, and we're progressing in the right direction. I couldn't thank her enough for her efforts.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming tonight.
You're welcome.
What do we have next? Approve a fee waiver request from Barnstable County Sheriff's Office Sergeant Luke Carroll to waive community center usage fee for a youth academy sponsored by the Sheriff's Office in the amount of $180 rental for activity room for 4 days.
Madam Chair, if I could, staff reached out for a sheriff's sergeant. I think we've been upgraded to a chief of police. So I imagine you're going to speak to the request. Is that on behalf of Luke?
Yes, and actually we have Casey Myers here from the Sheriff's Office as well. So I just, Madam Chair, Dave Gilmet, Chief of Police, members of the board, I just wanted to let you know I have throw my full support behind this request. I'm familiar with the Sheriff's Youth Academy program, have been for probably over 20 years. It's a fantastic program. It's targets the age group that we miss in the Adult Citizens Academy, and we're really excited to see that it could come to Harwich. So our youth here, we could engage our youth here as well as from other communities. But I touched base with Sheriff Buckley on this, and she graciously sent Casey Myers, her communications director. So if Casey wants to come up and say a couple words about their youth academy, just so you know anything, you have any questions or anything.
Great,
Okay,
thanks,
thanks.
Chief.
Casey?
Hi, yeah. Our youth academy has existed for decades, as the chief said, and it's traditionally a summer program, and it targets kids who are somehow at risk in some ways. They've been referred by police officers, by their counselor, by school counselors, or sometimes they're court involved already, and this is a diversionary avenue for them. Since Sheriff Buckley got into office in January, she's trying to expand it into a year-round program. And so this is our first foray into that, and we're trying to look for a space to hold it in February school break and also April school break. And the thought was, because these families are often very challenged by many things, and transportation among them, your site would be a perfect location to get some of the kids who are on the Outer Cape. And because traditionally the program is centered at Barnstable, at Cape Cod Community College, and we get a lot of our contacts are in the Bourne, Upper Cape area. So this would be a great chance to get some people out here, and the program, I had a lot of opportunity to observe it this summer, and it's really a great combination of providing discipline, providing a lot of mentorship. Our staff who works with the kids offer themselves as year-round mentors / even emergency contacts in time. And the program during the day, it's a month-long program in the summer, and we're now expanding it into the vacations too, brings a lot of the greatest youth leaders on Cape Cod to talk to these kids. So we have people from Children's Cove coming to speak to them. We have People Action. We have the Family Table Collaborative, just very inspiring speakers, and we mix that with discipline and mentorship, and then fun too, and team building. It really works. I've seen the progress over 1 month, and so I hope that you would see the advantage of having it in your local area.
Great, thank you very much
Yep.
for that background. Any questions from board members? Don?
Jeff, you want to go first?
I just have a couple of questions. Thank you for being here and
Sure.
and enlightening us on this. How many kids typically would you expect to come to our amazing town of Harwich and take advantage of this?
The summer program had about 20 to 27 kids. The few dropped out. I'm not sure about how many kids we could have here. I think we were trying to establish, because this is totally new for the winter, we were trying to establish locations first, and then Luke Carroll, our youth programs director, is working on his contacts on how to build, how to get how many kids to recruit.
Sure.
We always have a wait list. We always have more kids than we have room for.
Okay, last question. I see that it's a 4-day ask.
Right.
how long are they, not that it really matters, I'm just curious, but
Yeah.
how long are they in session for each day?
It's a half day for the
Half
winter.
day?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. No further questions?
Thank you, Jeff. Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's actually two things going on in this memo, but you may or may not understand that. The first one is whether or not the facility is even available, and that goes through the facilities director. What fee you might pay or not pay would go through here. So I guess the first thing is Carolyn have the time blocked out?
If I could, before our director comes up, staff worked with the community center director to confirm that the application is in, and the request in your agenda reflects the full fee that's being requested by the town and is then being sought to be
Yeah.
removed. So it's the $180.
Thank you.
I have worked with the Sheriff's Department, and they have been exceptional, and in 23 years, I have never supported a fee waiver. The room is available. We do have other things going on, but this is certainly a program that I would stand fully behind. It is serving a youth and a population that we need to do more for, so.
Thank you, Carolyn. Don?
So, Madam Chair, if somebody promises me that this will not get back to Michael.
He's listening, I'm just gonna tell you.
I'm sure he is somewhere.
Tuned in for this one.
I move that we waive the fee for this.
No? Second?
Hold on,
Oh.
hold on. If, please, this is a free program to the kids.
That's correct, yes.
Second the motion.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
3-0.
Thank
Thank you very
you.
much and good luck.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to be going into the witness protection program.
Yeah, well, we may need the sheriffs after the,
Yeah, Don may need a bodyguard.
Don may need Kevlar.
Okay, so old business.
Or
Update
or
on
really the reason why we've all been waiting for is update on the project
the
list, correct?
project
Yes.
list, that's right.
Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, members of the board, if you see the memorandum from our procurement stalwart, the Assistant Town Administrator, in an effort to continue to provide clarity, Megan and I discussed, and she came up with updated categories. And so I do want to emphasize that the language has been changed in an effort to make more sense. For example, the administrator might have suggested square one would work. That's been replaced. And that's been replaced with no bids received, so that then would eventually go back to awaiting initiation. Aside from that, and in the memo, I think the greater story is, if you remember when we began this analysis prior to, just after town meeting, there was more than 100 items on the list. We are now at 68 projects, with the vast majority of them being in some stage of completion.
Thank you, Joe. Any board members have any questions on the memo or the list?
I do. Joe, I probably overlooked it. Is the consultant / subject matter expert for charter bylaw review in this anywhere?
No, it's not. So I'll defer to,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, John, this isn't a public session, so if you would refrain from saying anything unless you're at the podium saying your name, I'd appreciate it.
And the only reason I asked Joe is because I thought it was on there way, way back, and I might be wrong.
so I think it was on there prior, because what we were trying to capture is, on the one hand, not that this categorizes what you're looking for, past projects and other things to be done. What we have here presently is ongoing procurement, so I can give you a direct update and make sure that that gets added back to it, but it does not appear to be here.
And thank you for the clarification, and that we can do that later on, and I appreciate that offer. Thank you.
Don?
No, assuming we're going to have this back again, defer until that occurs the next time.
John, I'll allow comment on it, but I mean, it's not really.
Hi, John Chory, 153 Gorham Road, and I apologize for speaking out there, and it happened to be the subject I was going to speak on, and I wanted to save some time by commenting. I apologize again for that. I do want to commend the Select Board, the Town Administration, Joe Powers, Megan Eldridge, and the staff for working on this project list. Like Joe said, it was over 100 projects lists. And this was one of the subjects that I was trying to work on when I was on the Finance Committee. And I did notice through the project list that that project was not on the list. And I know it was approved for $75,000 at the special town meeting in 2022 for the Charter Review Committee to get this $75,000 to hire a consultant to help them provide current ideas, instructions, and charter review changes if ones were going to be made for this upcoming town meeting. And I've been reading a lot in the Chronicle lately on the Charter Review Commission not doing this. And not only not doing it, but not getting satisfactory answers from town administration on why they're not getting the $75,000. To the frustration of that committee, they've taken out a petition to elect a Charter Review Commission or board for that. And I just wanted to get my opinion registered on why that was not being done as approved by the town citizens.
So I actually had just mentioned that today to staff about us getting an agenda item coming up. So it's not that this board has not done any movement on it. We've had a lot of different articles and different issues in front of us. And so obviously similar to the pickleball fees that will be discussed, they're all on the horizon. And so I see that being a discussion in the next few weeks.
Great, thank you very much.
Madam Chair, if I could, just before the speaker leaves. I'm hoping to have a response.
Oh, yeah.
So I've been working with the liaison from the board on that topic, separate from the committee. But I think I heard the previous speaker make comment to that there are petitions circulating on a charter commission. And I don't want people to mix things up. The select board through, or the town through the select board, had allowed me as town administrator to seek funding to look at our bylaws, general zoning, and the charter, the scope of which was reduced, but it was never intended to support a charter commission. So if that's what people are thinking, that was not the intended purpose for those funds. Rather, far different concept. Not something we need to go back and forth on tonight, but I think it's worth putting out there. Not entirely sure what the comment was getting to, but it is not related to any citizen efforts to do a charter commission.
Right, no, I heard that information as well. And ultimately, it's not part of what we were talking about doing under that article. So I'm not quite sure where that movement's coming from, and everybody can do what they want. But the bylaw charter review committee that's in place right now has one goal, and this board had clearly said that the zoning bylaw changes secondary to that would be taken from them, and they agreed with that when we had that. So. Anyway, that's.
I have no dog in this fight, but I just reading the explanation, and it clearly states that the purpose of this article is to appropriate funds to be used to support a comprehensive review of the town's current code, which is comprised of the Harwich Charter, general bylaws, and zoning bylaws. The goal of this review is to recommend changes to the elements of the town code referenced above, in anticipation that the proposed amendments to the code would begin at the next annual town meeting.
Right, and the code goes back to regulations and zoning bylaws as well, and that's what I'm saying is part of their meetings with us was to say that we would look at the zoning bylaws. They are looking at the charter. Don?
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just, John, so you understand this, you only got part of the information there. Everything from the town warrant goes to the article, but the article itself gets perfected by a vote of a motion. The motion did not include that, because I know I was involved in that conversation right before town meeting. It did not include zoning. It only included the other two, so.
I'm saying
Yeah, no,
we
I'm
took the
actually-
zoning out from that.
I'm actually agreeing with you
I
that
get it,
the
but-
motion that was made did not cover what you're reading. It only covered the zoning bylaws and it only covered the regular bylaws and the charter. It did not cover zoning bylaws.
Okay,
That
thank
were
you.
specifically excluded at the town meeting.
Okay, but but it's not on the project list, though. That was the crux of the whole talk here.
Okay, anyway, that's onward from there. Update on the status of the intermunicipal agreement with Cape Tech regarding 374 Main Street, and we can have that discussion. I just want to thank Michael. He's done a lot of hard work on that IMA, so.
Specifically, and I apologize, there was also supposed to be the word bog, so it's the 374 Main Street bog. As many folks know, this has been the subject of discussion for more than a year. The town has been working through Select Board Member McCaskill with the Cape Cod Regional Vocational Technical School and the school committee. The draft agreement is going before Conservation Commission at their meeting on Wednesday. And then we hope to have this come before the full board next week, as well as input from Conservation Commission.
Great.
So if all goes well on Monday, the 20th, that intermunicipal agreement should be executed.
Right, thank you, Joe.
Yep.
We're pulling the review and take action on, right? Because we do not need to do that, as I mentioned earlier. And contracts. Discussion and possible vote to accept amendment number 3 of the intermunicipal agreement for information technology services between the County of Barnstable and the Town of Harwich, which we had this last week. So, first, Joe.
So thank you, Madam Chair and members. As I mentioned when our director was presenting, this extension really gets to 3 items. As you noted last time in the memorandum from the Barnstable County IT Director, William Travers, what we're talking about is continued service and renewal. That's the amendment number 3. So what that's really doing is carrying forward, because we did have an expiration date. It's in the best interest of both parties to extend that. My recommendation, both to the county and the town, is for us to extend that through June 30th of 2025. And I can speak more to that in a moment. The change order that was referenced under Exhibit C4, change order number 1, talks about cost adjustments. And what that's getting to is based on extending the contract, it's adjusting for an annual increase of $40. So that would be 40 divided by 12 to really tell you what we're looking at monthly. And then last but not least, Exhibit C5, change order number 1, cost adjustments. The long and short of it is the town had been receiving services from the county for the 3 servers. We were not being charged for all 3. So we thank the county for their forbearance on that. We recognize it was their omission, so we're looking to pay our freight going forward. I would certainly recommend approval of the overall amendment, which gets to those 3 items. However, I also want to put out there, as you consider this, and you've heard from our Information Technology Director. So one of the things we get in that annual service that would be extended through June 30th, 2025, as Ms. Eaton was mentioning, is help desk support. So the administrative framework for that is the predecessor director was unable to really take time because there was no one else left to do the job in the absence of the director. And I think that led to an incredible cost for the town fairly recently. Our IT director is one of 5 individuals that is a single-person department, and that is to say that they're it. They're the entire department. However, with IT, we can partner with the county to provide that help desk support. So as our director has been getting us through the Munis upgrade, which was a carryover project, the migration to 365 and Teams, while now working simultaneously on our website update, which we hope to do an announcement at town meeting on, and then roll out shortly thereafter. Barnstable County IT provides that critical back office support. So it allows our director to do as much strategizing as her predecessor did help desk tasks. We can certainly go away from that model, but the simple response would be to do so would require more staff.
Thank you, Joe. Any,
The only thing I'd say is I'm sensitive to employee compression, and I think, as I stated, you do an unbelievable job, and I think this is a good partnership for the town. So if I may make a motion, Madam Chair? I love making motions. I move that we vote to accept amendment number 3 of the intermunicipal agreement for information technology services between the County of Barnstable and the Town of Harwich as presented by Town Administrator.
Second.
moved and seconded. Any further discussion, Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I totally agree with what Jeff said. I mean, it's unreasonable to continue with a model where we have one person. It's got to worry about dragging us 15 or 20 years from the past into the future. Ideally, I'd love to be able to see a future that has more than one person in that office, but this can at least bridge us to that point, because I suspect this is not going to be a great fiscal year for most governments. So this would be the ideal choice for the short term.
Thank you, Don. So moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
3-0.
Thank you, folks.
Town Administrator's report.
So Town Administrator report, I have nothing to announce other than I will not be at your meeting next week. So I'd like to take the indulgence to wish everybody, certainly the board, everybody present, our staff members, our residents and all who visit Harwich. However you give thanks or find thanks, I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving time frame. I certainly look forward to doing the same, as I feel that there's much to be thankful for despite the conditions of the world. So happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Thank you, Joe. Select Board members report. Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, as others have said, I was at the ceremony for Veterans Day. It was a remarkable, not just facility, but the event itself. I was there with my wife, and she started crying. It was just a really lovely time. It was really well attended compared to other years. So all things considered, this was just a wonderful day.
Thank you, Don. Jeff?
Yeah, I'd echo the same thing. Thank you to Robin, all who helped. It was fantastic. Brought my whole family, and it was really something. I didn't know that that existed, and it was just really special. Thank you to all the veterans. I was at Harwich Elementary, Monomoy Elementary today at the book fair buying a bunch of books. What a great job the PTO done. I mean, it was so cool, well attended. All the kids were happy. No fights. It was great. November 30th, please come see me. I'll be sending out requests for another board member if they'd like to join, but I'm going to say it again. It's been so well attended, and there have been so many great questions and conversations. And whether it's me or myself and another board member, I'm thrilled to continue to be a part of it, and hope to see anybody and everybody who wants to come and share there with me.
Great. Thanks, Jeff.
You're welcome.
I had a wonderful weekend with my daughter, who recently moved to Boston, so that was quite nice.
One down.
That's it. And can I get a motion
Move to adjourn.
thank-
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.